So there is a lot of hate in the community right now for 90% silver. I've been seeing it in the comments on my channel, other channels as well, and I've even seen it in Reddit posts. And before we get really deep into this video, guys, and this is a totally unscripted video, I have some comments I'm going to share with you, but I haven't written out a script. You're going to hear me raw when I'm talking about 90% today. But before we get into it, I want to say flat out that I understand. I really do. I get it. Because if you think about a couple of years ago, in fact, let's actually read this comment first. This one comes from Mike Knoll 1130. It says, personally, will never ever buy 90%. Never ever buy it. He says, who in the world wants to buy 90% when you can turn right around and if you're fortunate, get 50% of what you paid? That is not investing. Also, a couple of years ago, dealers were making boatloads of money on premiums. Now you are going to get dollars under spot. Why would anybody do this? And then he goes on about how PMs are an unregulated industry, so on and so forth. All right, well, let's get into a couple of things that he said there. So he said personally he would never buy again. Fine, I totally get it. I actually, myself, just bought $100 face of 90% silver, and I'm going to tell you why later in this video and even what I paid because I found a really good deal. And it's actually going to be contrary to some of the comments I've also been hearing from people saying nobody is selling 90% silver under spot. I can assure you they are, including local shops, and I'll show you that in a minute. But you know, he had said right here, and I'm going to pull the comment back up just so I can kind of remember. He said, who in the world wants to buy it when you are fortunate to get 50% of what you paid? Now, what he's referring to here is that, you know, a couple of days ago, I did a video where I even spoke with Mike from In America Coins about how there was a freeze on 90% silver. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago when it first happened in the refiners. But now that refinery freeze on 90% silver is starting to filter to wholesalers and dealers. In other words, because they can't move their 90% off to refiners, the wholesalers and dealers are getting flooded with 90% silver and not enough people buying it. As a result, you've seen some coin shops stopping purchasing of 90% silver. And Silver Dragons yesterday, after I did my video a couple of days ago, he did one yesterday where he talked about the exact same thing. So that's what he's referring to. Here's the thing though. Lots of shops are paying way over 50% of spot for silver. And we'll talk about that in a minute as well. He also says a couple of years ago, dealers were making boatloads of money on premiums. Now you were going to get dollars under spot. Why would anybody do this? Well, let's talk about what happened a couple of years ago. And we're going to do that really quick. But really quick, guys, I do want to tell you, if you want to have a chance to get some free silver, I do want to plug my channel sponsor, SD Bullion. You've had all year to enter this giveaway, but if you haven't done so yet, do it now. They are giving away a full monster box, 500 ounces of 1 ounce silver Tree of Life coins. I'll put a link in the description down below. And thank you to SD Bullion for sponsoring my channel. Okay, so anyway, what Mike is talking about here, and we'll just say it one more time. He said, also a couple of years ago, dealers were making boatloads of money on premiums. Now you are going to get dollars under spot. Well, what Mike was talking about there is a couple of years ago, and if you've been a subscriber of this channel for a while, you probably remember me talking about this extensively. But a couple of years ago, there were massive, massive premiums on things like Silver Eagles, Silver Rounds, and especially 90%. Well, actually, especially Eagles, because Eagles had the highest, but there were premiums on all of them. And Eagles were the worst. And even though this isn't about Eagles, let me tell you about it. So let's say back then, I don't have exact numbers in front of me, but I know that the premiums are right. Let's say back then spot was $24 an ounce. Well, there were some retailers, one specifically that I actually covered on the channel, that had Silver Eagles at 48. That's double spot. Guys, you were paying twice the price of silver for 1 ounce of silver than what spot price was. And for 90%, there were premiums as high as $15 an ounce over spot per dollar face, not per dollar face value, but over spot. So yeah, if silver was 24, you take 24, add 15, and then multiply that by your 0.715. A massive number. Now, keep in mind, even rounds still had high premiums at $5 or $6 an ounce over spot. But also, hindsight's 2020, right? I mean, you know, yeah, $5 or $6 over spot is ridiculous. But I guess, you know, if we could go back then, we'd be happy to buy it, wouldn't we? Man, if I could go back and buy, oh yeah, I'll pay $6 over spot for your silver round, spots at 24, 30. Yeah, please give me as many as you have. But again, hindsight's always 20/20. But anyway, that's what he's referring to. Is he said dealers were making massive, massive boatloads of money on 90%. And don't get me wrong, dealers were definitely making money. There is no doubt about that. I'm never going to say that dealers aren't making money. I'm never going to say that dealers are struggling, because most dealers are doing very well for themselves. But it wasn't as bad as his comment is saying, because I also showed on the channel back then, I did videos where I called coin shops to find out what they were paying for 90% silver, and they were paying way over spot for 90% silver back then as well. So it wasn't like they were like, oh, well, I'm only gonna give you spot price for your 90%, and I'm gonna sell it for $15 an ounce over spot. That wasn't what was happening. I mean, maybe it was happening with a few shops, as we all know with all my coin shop call videos, that there are shops out there that are pretty ridiculous when it comes to their buy-sell spreads. But the good shops were paying very, very strong for 90% to get it, because you couldn't get it anywhere. At the time, wholesalers didn't even have it. Like, I showed screenshots of wholesalers back then that were completely out of stock at 90%. So they had to rely on the very few people that were willing to sell them 90% across the counter. Not very many people were doing that back then because spot prices were so low. And so for that reason, they really didn't have a whole lot. So the premiums were really high. But again, getting back to his comment, they were making boatloads of money. Yeah, they were making good money. They were selling it for high premiums, but it wasn't like they were buying it for spot and selling it for 15 over. But anyway, fast forward to today, and now shops, there's no shop out there that's going to pay you spot for 90% silver. Not even close. And this is why. Let me show you this. So I'm actually going to pull up this screenshot right here. Actually, first, let me tell you a couple of comments. So in the video I did the other day, I said that at the end of the video, I said that there are shops now selling 90% back of spot. And I got a lot of comments from people that said, no one's selling 90% back of spot. This is, that's a lie, blah, 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 BS, so on and so forth. A lot of comments, people, when I say things, I don't say them because I just think that may be happening. Guys, you're never going to hear me say something on this channel that is just me, like, obviously, there are things I say that are my opinion. Let me be very clear. But I'm never going to say shops are selling 90% silver back of spot if I don't know that to be a fact. All right. But I got comments from people, at least 20. A lot of them were in my held comments, whatever. I got at least 20 comments from people calling me a liar, saying that's BS, saying, where the shop sell 90%? I can't find it. There's no one selling 90%. But then you had comments like this one right here. He said, our local shop sold us some mercury dimes today, right at $2 back of spot. I'm calling that a deal. As the comment below me says, this price won't last forever. That is true. This comment right here says, my LCS is months into selling constitutional below spot. They are $2.50 per ounce under spot. And here is a perfect example. This is current. I just refreshed the page. Silver is at 48.05. This dealer, which is a dealer near me, automatically updates all of their buy-sell prices based on spot price. And just to show you, for example, you can see very clearly, if you look at Silver Eagles, they are paying 52.05, which is +4 for MS70 commons, 49.05 for 69 commons, 52.55. These are clearly plus 1 or 3 or 350, whatever it is. So it's clearly based on spot price. So whenever you refresh the page, it updates on spot price. And if you look at their 90% right here, we're going to scroll down. Here it is right here. 90% silver, loose, 10 dimes and quarters. This right here, this is their sell price. This is their buy price. This is what they're paying. This is what they're selling it for. They're selling 90% right now, dimes and quarters, for $33.28. Now, it says you have to be a Bullion Club member to get that price. I will tell you that Bullion Club membership is free. They just want your phone number or email address so they can send you, flyers and specials. It doesn't actually cost you to join the Bullion Club. So, assuming you give them your email address to become a Bullion Club member or your phone number, you are going to get this Bullion Club price. So, again, they are selling 90% dimes and quarters for $33.28. All right, so let's grab our calculator and see if that's back of spot, and we'll take 48.05 times 0.715. Well, golly gee, it is 34.35, and here's a shop selling it for 33.35 for halves and 33.28 for dimes and quarters. $1 back of melt, $1.07 back of melt price. So that is well back of spot, because if you take $1 times 1.4, they're basically selling it for $1.40 per ounce back of spot. Now, going back to Mike's comment here, and keep in mind, I'm not trying to criticize Mike for feeling this way about 90%. I know why people are turned off. I said it at the beginning of the video, is that I get it. It's tough to see 90% going so low on spot and dealers paying so little, some dealers turning it off. But he did also say, who in the world wants to buy 90% when you can turn right around and, if you're fortunate, get 50% of what you paid? Well, that's not necessarily the case either, because even though Mike, like he had said the other day, had stopped buying 90% temporarily, a lot of shops haven't, and this shop right here is still buying it, and it's nowhere close to only 50% of what they're selling it for. So if we go back and look at the sheet, they're selling, like we had said, Bullion Club price. And keep in mind, I just want to point out, that, I said earlier, Bullion Club price we're looking at, it's free to join, but the difference between Bullion Club and non-Bullion Club is very minimal. So, for example, with half dollars here, 33.35 if you're Bullion Club, 33.43 if you're not. It's so close that it's almost irrelevant, but it is a little bit of a discount regardless. Anyway, if we look at this, they're selling, I should say, 90% half dollars for 33.35, but they're paying 30.53 for them. Now, that's a significant difference. It's quite a bit, per ounce. It's quite a bit per dollar, but it's nowhere near 50%. So if we grab our calculator and we'll look at this again, they're selling them for 33.35, and then we subtract what they're buying it for, which is 30.53. That's $2.82 per dollar times 1.4. It's $3.95 per ounce is the difference between their buy and sell. Again, it is a big difference. No argument there. But it's not 50%. And given that the market is so weak at 90% right now, you can assume that shop, like Mike's shop and others, are buying a lot more 90% silver than they're selling right now. That's actually, in my opinion, pretty fair from a business standpoint. Obviously, it doesn't feel good to be in you, but running a business, it kind of makes sense. You have to be able to sell the product that you buy. Other words, you'll eventually run out of cash. I've said this many times. So at the beginning of this video, and we're going to finish here, I told you that I ordered a $100 face of 90% silver. It was half dollars, and I told you what I paid for it, and I told you I'd tell you why. Well, here's why. I bought a $100 face of 90% silver. This isn't it. This is a bag I've already had. But I ordered a $100 face that isn't here yet, and I paid $1.50 back of spot price, and I actually did it yesterday when it started the dip after it spiked up, and then it started to pull back. So I went ahead and pulled the trigger and bought some 90%, and the reason I did it is because I think right now, even though spot price is well higher than it was a few years ago, I feel like, personally, and this is not financial advice, this is my opinion, that this economy still supports $50 an ounce silver. And when I can buy silver not only at under $50 an ounce, but less than spot price, it feels good to me. If it doesn't to you, that's totally fine. If you do like to buy 90% or silver at all, but not necessarily 90% because you don't like what's happening with 90% right now, I get that as well. But I think that this is temporary. Once the glut frees up, once refineries start buying 90% again, we could absolutely see it turn around and premiums start to go back up on 90%, shops paying more, so on and so forth. So for me, for my deep stack, for something I'm holding long term, I feel really good about being able to buy 90% silver back of spot. But again, my opinion only. So guys, that's what I had for today's video. If you liked it, if you learned a little bit, or if you want to learn more about silver, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And also guys, as always, don't forget to stack long, stack heavy, and we'll see you in the next video.